Hello and welcome. Tales of sorrow and anguish trail killings at the border between Benue and Ebonyi. Benue State government says up to 100 people may have been killed. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo says the nation is currently flowing with bitterness, insists Nigerians must talk to one another in a civilized manner. National Assembly vows to ensure that final outcome of the ongoing constitutional amendment process reflects the views of the citizens. And US to share a stockpile of 25 million unused COVID-19 vaccines with the rest of the world, 5 million to come to Africa. Plus we'll have business, sports, news from Abuja, and later on international news from our London studio.
On business news tonight, Central Bank of Nigeria announces plans to increase cotton production and capacity of textile companies to attain self-sufficiency in Nigeria.
On sports news tonight, Nigeria withdraws from hosting this year's CAA African Athletics Championships over health issues.
I lead some
in the Niger Basin area at the virtual summit of the heads of state and government of the Niger Basin Authority.
Days after the gruesome murder of many residents of Ize community in Benue State by suspected herdsmen, more indications are emerging that the death toll from that attack may have risen to 100. The Benue State Deputy Governor, Mr. Benson Abono, revealed this today when he visited the affected community. He wants the president to speak up against the cycle of violence in the state and across the country.
The journey from Makurdi, the Benue State capital, to Izi and Iza community of Ijigban Council Ward, Ado Local Council, is almost 200 kilometers. But the bad terrain leading into the interior villages makes the trip a lot more difficult, as it takes the Benue State Deputy Governor and the security team 3 hours to get there. Although Izi community sits on the side of Benue, close to the border with Ebonyi State, it's predominantly an Igbo-speaking area. Speaking through an interpreter, the district head of Ijigban, which covers Iza and Izi community, says it's difficult to help his subject as they do not honor his invitation nor discuss their problems with him.
Even this one that is happening now, some persons called him from outside to inform him of what is happening in his own domain before he now know what is happening here, because to them, they don't belong to Benue State.
Recounting the attack that had killed over 50 people, an eyewitness says a lot of his people are still missing.
Later on, when the thing escalated that there's a killing within the community, they now started shooting. They started shooting guns, killing people just like that. We have discovered 51 corpses so far. We have discovered 51, and we are still searching the bush to see if we can get more corpses, because there are people that run into the bush. We have not seen them up to now, so I'm talking to you.
Meanwhile, a federal lawmaker from the area laments what he describes as the failure of the federal government to implement several safety resolutions from various fora.
We must all work together to fish out all the criminals that have carried out this act. I am more concerned about that, because if I get to Abuja now and I move all the motions on the floor, I speak all the English on the floor, you pass all the resolutions, the agencies of federal government would hardly implement our motions and our resolutions.
Worried by the pains as could be seen on the faces of the displaced children, as well as aged men and women who survived the attack, Mr. Abono appeals to President Muhammadu Buhari to speak against these killings.
We were made to understand the initial figure stood at about 60 people slaughtered by Fulani herdsmen. But now, as I came here, they've even discovered more corpses. Some people are even mentioning a staggering figure of 100. But be that as it may, I think it is suffice to say that a good number of people lost their lives. We are here today appealing to all the relevant organs of government, and particularly the presidency and leaders of Fulanis, to speak up and ask them to stop this carnage.
Of equal concern is the migration of rural dwellers to the safer urban area, abandoning their farms and creating a fertile ground for food scarcity.
From Benue to Zamfara State, where armed bandits attacked a Fulani settlement in Anka local government area of the state and rustled a number of cows. The bandits reportedly stormed the community around 5 p.m. on Wednesday, shooting sporadically, but were engaged in a gun duel by policemen in a mining company along the road. An eyewitness said a motorcycle belonging to the leader of the Fulani community in Anka was also set ablaze by the armed bandits, but no life was lost. The state police command say they succeeded in repelling the attack and recovered the rustled cows. A lecturer at the Taraba State University who was abducted on Tuesday has regained his freedom. A source from the family told channels that Mr. Buba Umar had been released by his abductors but did not say if a ransom was paid. His abduction and subsequent release makes it the third time lecturers will be kidnapped from the institution's staff quarters. Just a few months ago, a local government chairman was kidnapped and killed. Staying with security matters, the police in Akwa Ibom State has arrested 10 people suspected to be responsible for the killing of security agents and destroying their facilities. The arrest was carried out by the Joint Task Force comprising the Army, the Police, Department of State Security Services, and the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, which coordinated a series of raids on the locations of the criminals. And at least 3,000 people have been killed in violent crises in Nigeria between January and May 2021. And that's according to the Mass Atrocities report produced by Global Rights Nigeria, a civil society organization. The report was presented at the Multi-Stakeholders Consultative Forum on Peace and Security Challenges held in Abuja. Our correspondent, Empress Simon, reports.
This is another effort at finding solution to Nigeria's lingering security challenges as civil society organizations, government officials and representatives of security agencies gather to examine the security issues in the country, especially in the southeast region.
It is only through dialogue, it is only through involvement, it's only through hearing all the stakeholders that sustainable peace can actually be achieved and built.
We insist that there must be, fairness, justice in this country. Because if there is no fairness, there is no justice, and people are jobless, and looters are having their way, this cannot continue to bring peace and stability in our country.
The security situation in the southeast region has upscaled in recent times, and participants at this forum believe this is largely due to a disconnect between the federal and state governments in addressing the underlying issues.
It is an anomaly that today the 774 local governments in the country are not functional. But that is where we have challenges. Ungoverned spaces, unsecured areas, where you have kidnapping, you have banditry, you have cultism.
But the Chairman House of Representatives Committee on Army believes state governors and politicians using thugs to win elections at all costs are culpable.
It was politicians who were busy carrying talks around that have manifested to this crisis. Because after you get into office, you cannot be able to no longer, you feel like you have done your own part. You don't go back to the boys.
According to the 2020 Mass Atrocities report, 4,556 deaths relating to violent crises were recorded in 2020, mostly in northern Nigeria, while at least 3,000 deaths have been recorded between January to May this year, with Southeast having about 400 deaths.
In a single year, we noted a 43% increase in the number of fatalities in this country.
This is the second multi-stakeholders consultative forum on peace and security challenges to be organized by CISLAC in 2021, and participants believe that it is time to go beyond words and put them into action. By this they mean there has to be collective responsibilities by all involved. Empress Simon, Channels Television News.
Former President Olusegun Obasanjo says Nigeria is bitter and sad in the face of the current socio-economic, political and security challenges facing the country, noting that this is contrary to the dreams and aspirations of its founding fathers and what God destined the country to be. He made the comments in Abeokuta, the Ogun State capital, at the unveiling of a book written in his honor entitled The Man, the General, the President. Chief Obasanjo also called for a change in narrative as he identifies leadership failure as an impediment to the realization of the nation's potential in the Committee of Developed Nations.
Thank you very much. Now that we have...
My prayer is that all of us, particularly in this country and now, we have something to contribute to make this country what God has created it to be, a land flowing with milk and honey. Right now, it's a land flowing with bitterness and sadness. That is not what God meant for this country. We must change it, and we must change the narrative. We must even talk to ourselves in civilized language. The language in which we talk to ourselves is at times so atrocious. And like I said to some people who came to see me earlier today, there's nowhere you go in this country. If you look hard, you will not get near genius. Any section of this country, you'll find them. North, south, east, west, anywhere. So for what reason should we look down on ourselves? Or should you look down on others? Except that you are not a human being. Or if you are a human being, you are not being human. If you are a human being and you are being human, one of the things that you will have are those values that we cherish.
The Defense Headquarters in Abuja has dispelled reports of mass compulsory retirement of senior military officers following the appointment of a new Chief of Army Staff. Addressing journalists at a news conference on the various operations of the military between May the 20th and June the 2nd this year, the Acting Director, Defense Media Operations, says no retirement has been authorized by the Military High Command.
You are all aware of the appointment of the Chief of Army Staff, Major General Farouk Yahya. This has stirred a lot of rumors in the media about mass retirement in the armed forces. I wish to use this medium to dispel such unfounded rumors. Retirement is only on voluntary basis for senior officers who desire to do so. At this point in time, no retirement has been authorized by the Military High Command. Once again, we want to assure Nigerians that the Nigerian military remain resolute to take decisive and adequate actions to abate terrorist and bandit activities as well as other vices in all parts of Nigeria. The Military High Command will not be wary of appreciating the general public for their support and continuous encouragement. We wish to continue to encourage them to provide credible and timely information that will facilitate our proactive engagements in all the theaters of operation. The Military High Command also laud the efforts of our gallant troops in all the theaters of operation and our security agents involved in various operations across the country for their resilience and indefatigable commitment.
In part 2, after the break, Imo State Governor Hope Uzodinma inaugurates new Security Council at the grassroots level in the state in a bid to tackle insecurity. That's in a moment. We join us again. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Tales of sorrow and anguish trail killings at the border between Benue and Ebonyi. Benue State government says up to 100 people may have been killed. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo says the nation is currently flowing with bitterness, insists Nigerians must talk to one another in a civilized manner. National Assembly vows to ensure that final outcome of ongoing constitutional amendment process reflects the views of the citizens. And US to share a stockpile of 25 million unused COVID-19 vaccines with the rest of the world, 5 million to come to Africa. The Imo State Police Command says 3 people have been killed by gunmen at Oji area of Owerri, the Imo State capital. The State Police Public Relations Officer Bala Elkana said in a statement that the hoodlums blocked the Oji flyover and started shooting sporadically, causing commuters and residents to flee, and in the process, 3 persons were killed. Although normalcy has returned to the area, the cause of the shooting is unclear. He says investigations have commenced and the Commissioner of Police, Sabutu Iyaro, has ordered a manhunt for the assailants. And the Imo State Governor, Hope Uzodimma, has inaugurated a new security council at the grassroots level in the state in a bid to tackle insecurity. Governor Uzodimma says the Security Council, which is drawn from across the 27 local government areas of the state, is a new technique and a strategy in tackling the challenges. He also accuses opposition parties and aggrieved APC members in the state of fueling insecurity in Imo.
I had advised that traditional rulers should warn these boys, even though most of you have refused to reveal their names. You should warn them, because I am bringing a security strategy, known and unknown, to manage security in Imo State. The work of this council is not only to organize the security or vigilante group. This council must now go home and get us names of every criminal in their communities. You must collect intelligence for us. You must collect intelligence for security agencies to work. But I can assure you that the opposition party and some aggrieved members of our party who are hiring boys from neighboring states to come in here. Allow me, I will deal with them. I can assure you, leave that for me. So the people who threatened that will make Imo ungovernable, before Imo becomes ungovernable, they will be ungovernable themselves.
Meanwhile, the People's Democratic Party in Imo State and the ruling All Progressives Congress have engaged in a war of words over increased insecurity in the state and what the PDP calls failure of the governor to protect lives and property. The state chairman of the PDP, Charles Ugo, says the recent developments in the state have shown that the governor has no answer to the spate of killings.
In his capacity and responsibility as the Chief Security Officer of the state, has failed to protect the lives and property of Imo people. Consequently, under the circumstances, having critically reviewed the degeneration of bad security situation in the state, having evaluated the rate of casualties among civilian populations and security agents in the crisis, and having analyzed the immediate and remote causes and consequences of the deadly face-offs, Imo PDP has resolved as follows. In civilized climes, Governor Hope Uzodimma ought to have resigned by now. The current violent approach by Uzodimma has failed and will not work. It will not lead to peace. PDP calls on Imo people to take their destiny into their own hands by convoking an all-inclusive security summit immediately. The so-called press conference addressed by PDP today is just a self-indictment of the party as the real perpetrators of insecurity in the state. I think it's curious to ask some pertinent questions that we clearly tell everybody that PDP is really condoning the insecurity, and they are very happy, and they are playing a script. Now they believe they have reached the climax of their script, and that's why they are trying to jump into this very unfortunate, illogical request. And all the time that people were burning police stations, illegally taking the arms of policemen and so on, and sacking police stations, we never had PDP say anything. And so it's like all those things were playing into their script of making the state ungovernable.
From politics, let's cross over to Abuja now, and here's Makwe Ogun Yusuf. Makwe.
Hello, Ijoma. It's good to see you. Now, the president is calling for global support to develop the resources in the Niger Basin area, which is home to over 160 million people who depend on the river as a means of sustenance. President Muhammadu Buhari made the call while declaring open the virtual 12th summit of the heads of state and government of the Niger Basin Authority. President Buhari commended all members for their support and cooperation and congratulated his successor, President Roch Kabore of Burkina Faso.
The Niger River community called Joliba in Guinea and Mali is a means of sustenance for over 160 million people living in the basin area. This heritage offers enormous development opportunities in the fields of agriculture, animal husbandry, fishing, fish farming, hydropower, hydraulics, and navigation, among others. It is therefore necessary to continue to promote its enormous potential for the benefit of our people and to improve the socio-economic development of the region. Program for Inherited Development and Adaptation to Climate Change in Niger Basin, financed by African Development Bank, the Global Environment Fund, the German Financial Cooperation, and NVA member countries to improve the resilience of the Niger River ecosystems and populations through a sustainable management of natural resources. The program will cover the 9 NVA member countries. Distinguished delegates, it should be noted to our collective delight that these achievements were only possible with your active support.
President Muhammadu Buhari there addressing the Niger Basin Authority. Meanwhile, on the local fronts, the president also received the governor of Cross River State, Ben Ayade, and his counterpart from Kogi State, Yaya Bello, at the State House today. Governor Ayade is visiting the presidential villa for the first time since his formal defection to the ruling All Progressives Congress on May the 20th this year. After the meeting, he spoke to State House correspondents on the security situation in many parts of the country, saying that some foreign countries target nations with natural resources and support secessionist agitations because they want to boost their gun trade.
Opposition in a third world means let everything happen that will make the other party look bad so that we can win. So as there's increasing insecurity in a country, as Nigeria suffers attack by external aggressors, paid militias and bandits, the opposition party only celebrates that because it means that it's giving them a chance to win in 2023. As we sit back and think that this is just about politics, the country is snowballing into a civil strife. So what do we need to do to lower that temperature? We need to come together and support Mr. President to overcome the insurgency, which is characterized by external militias who are paid for the purpose. I know clearly that the major challenge we have is that there is an increasing interest in our solid mineral deposit, particularly on our tantalite and cobalt-related derivatives, as well as our diamond and gold. And like you know what the international community does to Africa. Once you see such high levels of solid mineral deposits, they will be very, very pleased to see that country go to war.
For Governor Yahya Bello, the current challenges confronting Nigeria has given rise to the need to fix the country politically by trying other options different from rotational presidency.
For once, let's get Nigeria fixed. We have practiced a seeming rotational presidency since 1999 till date. Let us evaluate our successes, our achievements from this seeming rotational presidency between then and now. Why don't we simply go for the best? After all, we copy this democracy from America and some other developed world. How many of these developed countries are practicing rotational presidency? You see, we are who we are today not because we are practicing rotational presidency. If you want to go by that rotational presidency, then do perfect zoning.
When the News at 10 returns, the Senate wraps up constitutional amendment hearing in Abuja. Plus, the central bank announces plans to increase cotton production and capacity of textile companies in the country. That's on Business News. Do join us again. You're welcome back to the News at 10. And in what could be described as a climax of public hearings, the National Public Hearing on Constitution Amendment kicked off today in the capital city with various individuals and interest groups presenting their positions on a wide range of issues to amend in the 1999 Constitution. The National Assembly, on its part, is assuring Nigerians that it has no preconceived ideas and it would ensure that the final product reflects the input citizens have made to the process. Our Senate correspondent Linda Akigbe reports.
Months of preparations, including receiving memoranda from Nigerians and zonal public hearings, is culminating in this national public hearing on Constitution Amendment taking place in Abuja, the capital city. Amending the Constitution could not have come at a better time than now, when the country is pulled apart by pervasive security problems, questions on nationhood, agitations for secession, endemic unemployment, and confidence in government at an all-time low.
I wish to assure you most sincerely that this committee will be guided strictly by best legislative practices, highest ethical standards, integrity, open-mindedness, and patriotism.
There are more than 16 areas identified by the public for amendment. They include gender equity, power devolution, local government autonomy, state police, judicial and electoral reform.
We also know that the issue of local government reform is an important issue. The local government system in the country has almost collapsed. We believe that the efforts that the National Assembly made in the 7th and 8th Assembly will be brought to fruition by this 9th Assembly.
The 6th National Assembly actually saw the flaw in the current laws. However, if it is made a constitutional provisions, then in my view, the courts will have no option but to obey it. So that where an election is nullified, they cannot then go and pick number 2 or number 3 or number 5 as the winner, but must ask the voters to go back and vote.
We are deeply concerned at the poor state of women's representation across all elective and appointive positions in Nigeria. We therefore call for the creation of special seats for women in the national and state legislatures.
26 federal states across the world, including the United States of America and Germany, who have practiced federalism for over 200 years, have minimum wage preserved in their national laws. In our document, those issues have been made very clear.
But there have been persistent calls for the creation of a new constitution, as some Nigerians question the efficacy of the 1999 constitution in addressing the structural challenges facing the country. Opinions are divided on this matter.
Call for a big tent conversation around the single issue amendment for a referendum and a referendum commission for our deliberation on a new constitution for the country.
I don't support that one for all to get a new constitution. As a matter of fact, this constitution that we are operating, what is bad in it?
Amendment, as far as I'm concerned, is as good as bringing something new in the constitution.
Well, there's nothing bad in inserting a referendum in the standard constitution. It could be there, but you cannot run a country in a vacuum. We must use what we have to get whatever anybody is asking for.
Amending the constitution is a tough process, and consensus would have to be built on all the areas up for amendment, both at the national and state levels. Linda Akibe, Channels Television News.
And to matters of governance at the subnational level, Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike says his administration has begun the implementation of no work, no pay policy against members of staff of the Rivers State Judiciary. He revealed this at the commissioning of the quarters built by the Rivers State government for judges of the National Industrial Court. Governor Wike says the judicial staff in the state have no justification to join the strike, as his administration has not erred.
They'll say, oh, they are implementing more than us.
Senior judicial officers across the country and eminent citizens of Rivers State are gathered for the commissioning of the National Industrial Court Judges' Quarters, built by the Rivers State government in Port Harcourt. The well-furnished 4 duplexes of 5-bedroom suites behind the government house is said to be part of Governor Wike's vision to provide comfort for state and national judicial officers. The President of the National Industrial Court and the Chief Justice of Nigeria applaud Governor Nyesom Wike as a pace-setter for other governors to follow.
As head of the NICN, it is a huge privilege to be part of this historic and epoch-making event. Not many ahead of court have enjoyed the pleasure of an eventful and cheery ceremony such as this. And for this, the National Industrial Court of Nigeria is immensely grateful.
By this singular act, Your Excellency has practically demonstrated your affection and innate passion for the welfare and well-being of the Nigerian judiciary. You have remained a strong voice in the clamor for judicial independence and financial autonomy. You do not just say it to attract attention, but have physically demonstrated it in different ways.
May I respectfully invite the Governor of Rivers State, His Excellency Nyesom Wike.
Despite the exciting atmosphere, Governor Nyesom Wike is not happy that the courts in Rivers State have been closed for nearly 2 months, despite his goodwill towards the judiciary. He also challenges the federal government to take responsibility of improving federal infrastructure across the country or devolve more power to the state.
If the federal government wants autonomy of the judiciary, how can a government today will say that the court should be shut down 2 months, almost 2 months now? Which country can survive a court to be shut down for 2 months? Assuming that the federal government is really interested in the autonomy of this. Assuming. So, there must be more to it, and Nigerians will witness what will happen.
With this project completed and handed over to the beneficiaries, the Rivers State government is proposing to build something similar for judges of the Federal High Court in the state.
And in the southwest, Oyo State may be set to experience a boost in its mines and agriculture sectors with the completion of the 65-kilometer road project. The expansive road network, which strategically connects Moniya, Ojutaye and Iseyin axis of the state, is expected to further facilitate the movement of food and mineral resources, as well as commercial activities in the Oke-Ogun area. The Oyo State Governor, Seyi Makinde, hosted his Benue State counterpart, Samuel Otom, who inaugurated the project.
Beginning today, road users in Oyo State would not have to spend any more than 45 minutes traveling from Iseyin to Ibadan, the state capital. This follows today's commissioning of the 65-kilometer highway linking Moniya, Ijayi and Iseyin. But it's a far cry from the hardship experienced on the road in the past. The project, re-awarded in November 2019 to Kopek Construction Company, is delivered at the cost of 9.9 billion naira and in record time.
We, as a company handling the project, we stood up to the challenge and we put up all our resources and capacities to meet up with the deadline. And despite all the challenges starting from the COVID-19 pandemic and all other challenges.
It's a huge leap to foster growth and development in the state's food and mines sectors. The road connects Oke-Ogun, the food basket of the state, to its solid mineral basin. Governor Seyi Makinde says the project is a promise kept.
Let me again remind our people that we promised you economic development and prosperity through our roadmap to accelerated development in Oyo State, 2019 to 2023. So this is just another way that we are delivering on good governance. This is another promise kept.
Before proceeding to commission the project, the governor of Benue State, Samuel Otom, says with the project, the governor is fulfilling the purpose of government.
Government is all about providing security for lives and property. Government is about providing infrastructure like the one we are doing here today.
God bless Federal Republic of Nigeria.
With this project delivered, Oyo State residents can only hope for more of its kind across the state in the future. Bukola Uriu, Channel Television News.
Well, the Central Bank of Nigeria has announced plans to increase cotton production and capacity of textile companies in the country. Anne Wanwado is standing by on Business News to give you details.
Banking, so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thanks a lot, Mark. Well, yes, let's begin business news with the Central Bank of Nigeria set to resuscitate the cotton, textile and garment sector as it plans to increase cotton production, the capacity of granaries and textile companies in the country. And this was disclosed by the CBN Governor, Godwin Emefiele, via the Apex Bank's Twitter handle during its cotton, textile and garment sector stakeholders engagement. Mr. Emefiele says the move in the sector will achieve self-sufficiency in production, creation of jobs and enhance skills across the value chain. He also adds that the CBN will be working with producers who have repaid at least 70% of their existing loans to cultivate about 80,000 hectares of land with an output of 120,000 metric tons at 1.5 metric tons per hectare. The National Pension Commission has increased the minimum regulatory capital requirement for pension fund administrators from 1 billion to 5 billion naira, with a 12-month transition period effective from April the 27th this year. A circular by the Commission today explains that the increased capital injection is necessary to maintain service standards and improve capacity of PFAs owing to the rapid growth in the value of pension assets under management by 244%. It also adds that growth means the greater responsibilities that requires more operational capacity by the PFAs. PENCOM states that it is monitoring the process and pension fund custodians are not affected by the recapitalization exercise. Meanwhile, the federal government says lack of funds and availability of land are the major factors affecting the commencement of inland dry ports in 7 cities across the country. According to that statement by the Nigerian Shippers Council, these factors have affected the early commencement of projects for the concessionaires owing to its capital-intensive nature. The build, own, operate and transfer agreement was signed in 2006 between the federal government and the concessionaires to establish inland dry ports in the cities and assist in decongesting the seaports as well as assisting in overall costs of cargo. Now let's move to the local equities. The bulls sustained positive momentum at the end of trading today. Investors are still turning their attention to shares of MTN Nigeria. Ovie Bikomo has the details.
The new month is turning out to be in the favor of the bull at the equities market, and that's because it sustained positive sentiment for a second consecutive session after a mildly lower start in the week. The 0.18% gain recorded on the primary indicator of the NGX at the close of Wednesday's trading session repeated itself today, and this time it was largely driven by increase in the share price of MTN Nigeria, Zenith Bank, and Lafarge, as well as the mid-cap stocks across 4 out of the 5 key sectors of the market. At the same time, the volume of shares transactions carried out today was higher by more than 92 million units when compared to the 156 million total units of equities traded yesterday. And this shows that investors are cautiously finding their way back to the local bourse after their share price of some high-value stocks dropped to their intrinsic value. It may be too early to forecast, but if the market sustains the current tempo, we might be likely to see a significant return to profitability for the rest of the month. Meanwhile, let's keep our expectations high for a positive outcome on Friday's session. That's all for the stock market report. I'm Ovie Bikomo.
Thank you, Ovie. Meanwhile, stocks in the U.S. fell in today's trade. Investors are digesting economic data and President Joe Biden's position on lower corporate tax rates. Let's see the closing numbers for today. And that's business news. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. It's back to you, Joma.
Banking, so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thanks a lot, Anne. The Biden administration has announced plans to share a stockpile of 25 million unused COVID-19 vaccine doses with the world. Of the 25 million doses, the White House says 5 million will go to Africa. Here's Simon Pusey with more international news in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Sri Lanka says they are prepared for the possibility of an oil spill after a cargo ship laden with chemicals sank off its west coast. The MV Express Pearl, carrying nitric acid along with other chemicals and cosmetics, was anchored off the port of the capital when a fire erupted on board after an explosion in May. The craft began to sink early on June the 2nd, but the attempt to tow the vessel to deeper waters was abandoned. The ship's operators said there was still no signs of a fuel oil spill from the ship. However, millions of plastic pellets have reached surrounding beaches and fishing grounds, prompting the government to ban fishing along a 50-mile stretch. A coastal oceanography professor says it's the worst man-made environmental incident in the country's history.
From an environmental point of view, it is the worst environmental disaster, man-made, or what we call anthropogenic. We can talk about the tsunami of 2004, but that's a natural disaster. From a man-made disaster, this is the worst to hit Sri Lanka.
The president of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics has ruled out a cancellation of the event as doubts grew among officials and medical experts whether the event can be held safely amid the pandemic. Saiko Hashimoto confirmed that Tokyo 2020 will go on as planned, although there will be restrictions in place. Athletes can expect to be regularly tested and foreign spectators are barred from attending the event. It's yet to be decided if Japanese fans will be allowed into venues. Public opinion polls in Japan have consistently shown that a majority want the games cancelled or postponed for a second time. Denmark's parliament has passed a law enabling the country to relocate asylum seekers to countries outside Europe, defying calls to abandon the plans from the United Nations. The move to pass the bill is an apparent break with the European Union's effort to overhaul Europe's broken migration and asylum rules. The bill would allow Denmark to move refugees arriving on Danish soil to asylum centres in a partner country, potentially outside Europe, where asylum seekers would have their cases reviewed and possibly obtain protection in that country. Kenyan runner Margaret Wambui has said World Athletics should introduce a third category of events in order to allow competitors with high testosterone levels to compete in their preferred disciplines. Like other athletes classified as having differences of sexual development or DSD, Ms. Wambui cannot contest any distance between 400 metres and 1 mile in the female category unless she artificially reduces her testosterone levels. The Kenyan was an 800-metre bronze medalist at the 2016 Olympic Games. 2 container cranes in a Taiwan port have collapsed after being hit by a vessel, leaving 2 people trapped and 1 injured. Social media video and photographs showed the aftermath where first responders were attempting to rescue the trapped workers, as well as paramedics waiting on scene. Officials walked through the port and evaluated the damage caused by the accident. It's been announced that Queen Elizabeth will meet US President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden at Windsor Castle on June the 13th. The visit comes as Mr. Biden attends the G7 summit in Cornwall in England. He will be the 12th US president the Queen meets during her 69-year-long reign. She met Mr. Biden's predecessor Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump at Buckingham Palace in 2019, while the first president she met was Harry Truman in 1951. And finally, take a look at these stunning drone images from a volcano in Iceland. Lava can be seen bubbling and flowing from the volcano 30 kilometers from the capital Reykjavik over 2 months after it started to erupt. It has since become a tourist attraction, drawing hundreds of visitors every day. Volcanologists have no idea how long the eruption will continue for, saying it could stop soon or continue for years, possibly even decades. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. Nigeria has withdrawn from hosting this year's African Athletics Championship. This followed the refusal of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 to grant approval for the competition to hold, owing to the rising trend of some cases in some countries expected to feature in the event. The countdown clock for the Tokyo Olympics has hit 50 days to go today. Now, to mark 50 days, organizers unveiled the podiums, costumes and music that will be used during the medal ceremonies. The organizers said that each item has been created with recycled materials and with utmost consideration of sustainability. And world number 1, Ashley Barty, has withdrawn from the French Open due to injury. The 2019 champion was forced to retire due to an issue with her left hip when she was 6-1, 2-2 down against Magda Linette in the second round. And Barcelona president Joan Laporta has confirmed that head coach Ronald Koeman will stay on for a second season at the Camp Nou. There has been speculation the Dutchman could leave in the summer after a poor end to the 2020-21 campaign, which saw the team's title hopes fizzle out. And that's sports news. It's back to you, Jomo.
Thanks, Ayotunde. And the main news again. Tales of sorrow and anguish trailed the killings at the border between Benue and Ebonyi states today, as the Benue state government said up to 100 people may have been killed. And also today, the former President Olusegun Obasanjo said the nation is currently flowing with bitterness. He insisted that Nigerians must talk to one another in a civilized manner. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thanks a lot for staying with us. I'm Ijoma Bunyato. Good night.